three parts to this conversation. I think we called it Reflections on New Jersey's Community Colleges, Past, Present, and Possible Futures. Now, my comrade in arms for all these many years, Linda Lamb, she said, Larry, there's a typo here. Why the S on future? Should it be future? I said, no, that was actually deliberate, because like any organization, including the colleges, you know, the future is not yet defined. It could go this way, or that way, and I want to talk about some of that, some of those possibilities. So first, I'm going to talk about the past, and for that portion, I do want to use this phrase that you've heard some of you might say too often, coordinated autonomy, and I want to drill down on that a little bit. The second part about the present, and for that, I want to, and there's one handout, so to speak, for each of these three portions. For the second part about the present, we want to take a quick peek at the white paper that, where's Lynn? Lynn Nowak, where are you? That you delivered to the two gubernatorial candidates today. That's the present. And in the future, for the futures, I want to seriously, but maybe playfully too, talk about some of the landmines for our sector right now and going forward, and what to do about them. So that's the lineup: past, present, and possible futures. So the past, again, I like stories. Coordinated autonomy, when all is said and done, is about multiple organizations, in our case 19 strong, seeing the wisdom of joining arms, joining forces for the good of the collective and all of the individual parts to the collective. And that concept, that principle, to me, is best illustrated by conversations we've had over the years on our capital funding program. You've heard us call it Chapter 12. This is well attended. I'm having trouble seeing people. Where's Mr. Perry? Jim, for those of you who have been to our office, you'll enter, and on your right is the Jim Perry. We have very humble offices, but we have a nice plaque, the Jim Perry Boardroom. And it was, Jim will remember, around Chapter 12, this early on, and this kind of, you know, got me encouraged that there was something special going on. These are all long stories. I'll give you the short versions. We had a problem with the Chapter 12 program. Was it Thanksgiving week? I think it was the holiday. Steve's nodding yes. I hope it wasn't Thanksgiving Friday. We were not Wednesday. So we're in what is now the Jim Perry conference room with the highest level of the governor's office, who, frankly, they had, with good intentions, let's say, they had made a mistake. And so how to right that mistake. And we would talk, and they would, then at one point they said, we need a place where we can talk privately amongst themselves. And so they walked into our kitchen and closed the door, and they came back out and gave us a proposal, and Jim was the chair at the time. Well, that's a step in the right direction, but then we're talking about money. You know, like 30 million. Well, 30 million make this feel all right. No. And they'd go back to the kitchen, and they came back out, how about 40? And good poker face. And then finally we did settle on a $50 million increase in the Chapter 12 funding to keep the collective whole. Now, Dr. Welbrack, this is maybe one of my favorite stories too, also on Chapter 12. Again, all to make the point, good things happen when the group can stick together. So we secured a $200 million increase, pretty serious money in the Chapter 12 program. And I have to decide in the moment here how many names I want to change to protect the innocents, either individuals or colleges. But I can say this much, Bakari Elise here. We thought at the time that Hudson County Community College, because it was our one college that had for years leased space, that out of this 200, they deserved a little bit more than the others. And I want to be clear, we didn't think that way because we got any marching orders from legislators. It was the right thing to do. So that was the recommendation we worked on. And here's where I won't disclose the other party, but the strong trustee leadership at one of our colleges said, you can't do that. those people in Hudson County, they don't deserve that extra money. We deserve extra money. Everybody deserves extra money. So Dick then was our chair. And were you part of this meeting too, Steve? And Linda? So we go up to this law firm. Well, I've said up, so now I've disclosed it's North Jersey. To meet with this trustee, very excellent trustee, who said, this is just not right. And Dick, you may know, is very active in the Boy Scouts. How many Eagle Scouts have you mentored?
I was 20 years as Scoutmaster.
Dick arrives for this very important meeting in his full Boy Scout, including shorts. And I'm thinking, okay, I hope this other gentleman appreciates Boy Scouts. So, and then furthermore, we're standing, we powwowed, we agreed to meet before the meeting, the four of us, to plan our strategy, to persuade this trustee, because he was hell-bent on opposing this with everything he could bring to muster at the council meeting scheduled for the following week. We have to take these things to a vote. And Dick gets quiet, and I notice he's glancing up, and I said, Dick, what's the matter? He said, I got a very bad feeling about this meeting. Well, why? This firm represented my first wife, and they took me to the cleaners. Do you remember that, Dick? So anyhow, the bad mojo aside, we went into the meeting, and Dick was powerfully, shorts and all, persuasive, and Steve and Linda, and this gentleman said, look, I still don't agree, but I'm going to do you a favor. I won't come to the council meeting. Works for us. So we left that meeting, and I had two lasting memories to this day and thoughts at the time. One was, this coordinated autonomy, it's got some magic going to it. This actually might work. And it has. And the second observation I had, as I watched Dick walk to his car, I thought, Dick's got pretty attractive legs. And he does. So with that said, let me point you to the first handout on the top. And this I have to be quick to say, I just want to show you what coordinated autonomy has delivered. And it's hard to talk about this without it seeming like I'm patting myself on the back, and I don't mean it to be that, of course. It's about the energy that we saw at that meeting that I just spoke about, the meetings I've spoken about. But I think I could have put 50 things on this list, and these are in no particular order, but some of you may know all of these, some of you may know some of them. I'm not going to drill down, but just from the top, you may not know that this council had a major role in writing the 1994, where does the time go? Higher Ed Restructuring Act that delivered to you and us the autonomy that we enjoy to this day and the coordination by the council around that autonomy. It immediately, number two, delivered dividends. Then Governor Whitman announced a multi-year commitment to increase state funding to community colleges, in large part in response to a tuition freeze pledge that the 19 community colleges did, not because a chancellor told them to do it, but because they saw the potential, and a $60 million increase. I got to be careful not to digress with too many stories, but this one makes me chuckle. I think of when you want to build up a consensus around a tuition freeze, well, what do you do if you're in my position? You go to the easy ones first. And I saved I thought would be the toughest college to persuade and their president for the last. And so I called that president, and no way am I going to freeze tuition. We're just not going to do it. You can't ask me to do that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, fill in the blank, but Governor Whitman's given her speech in an hour, and I promised we would have the word, and I'm sorry I can't do it. Oh, just so you know, the other 18 have already agreed to it. You son of a... All right, so we got our tuition pledge. But you might think it odd that I would start with state funding because we haven't enjoyed that success of late. But when the state had some money, the council and the college's newly empowered, that was something to behold. A 5-year, Linda, I think, state funding increase that was very impressive. Number 3, Chapter 12, I've already talked about. Look at that number, $1.2 billion in Chapter 12 funding over the past 2 decades. And you'll see a repeating theme here. Community colleges are the only higher ed sector to have an annual capital funding program. Never enough, but that's kind of a big deal. Number 4, TAG, where's Maria? Sits on the HESA board. You know this. Forever, you had to be a full-time student to get what's known in New Jersey as a TAG award. What's it stand for? Tuition Aid Grant, I think. And so we went to work and we said, you know, half of our students are part-time. Sorry, can't do it. Sorry, can't do it. Sorry, can't do it. And we finally got it done. And again, as it says here, to this day, only community college part-time students are eligible for those. Right, Maria? NJ Stars, you know about. Yes, it's taken a nick, you know, with the tough budget climate, but we're proud that it's still around. New Jersey used to have other merit-based scholarship programs. They're all gone. Stars is the only one that's survived, and Lynn's working on legislation to try to restore it to what it was. The Lampett Law, number 6, Camden County proud. Assemblywoman Pamela Lampett, she was elected to the legislature. Camden County College and I, in the first week, had lunch with her in the State House and laid out some priorities. Great legislator. She still serves in the legislature. And to this day, when she says, you know, of all the good work I've done, and she's done a lot, Helen, she says, this one is the only one where my family says, is there a bill actually named after you? The Lampett Law. Not perfectly so, but it does guarantee junior status to our students when they transfer. And although I am being recorded, I can say it won't surprise you to hear that the senior colleges opposed this with everything they had. This shouldn't be in statute, shouldn't be in statute. We got it done, and the final vote was unanimous in both chambers. 40-0, 80-0, or thereabouts. That was a big moment for us. Number 7, where's Christine? The Center for Student Success. Our current executive director, Jessenia Mattes, our first executive director. You know, when the country started talking about student success, we weren't really on the radar screen, to be honest, New Jersey. They looked upon us as a wealthy state, you know, you don't need this extra help. But, you know, we went to work and again, through persistence, got to know people, and we were the 4th Center for Student Success, I think the 4th, created in the country. And to their credit and their teams, your staff, the presidents, there's no question New Jersey is recognized as a national leader in the student success space. And we're really, really proud of that. And we do it because it's the right thing to do. But look at that last sentence. Since we started this work, the number of community college graduates has increased by 50%. That's pretty impressive. That didn't happen, that needle moved, and it didn't happen by accident. More quickly, number 8, the partnering that we do with high schools, very important, very promising, helping high school students, at last count about 3,000 students, those who need help to catch up so that they don't need remediation when they come to us. That's a big deal. And it turns out a lot of these students, and not necessarily the A students, are ready to take college courses in high school. We're about 20,000 strong now throughout our state, high school students taking community college courses. That's something we're proud of. The Workforce Consortium, number 9, one of the better ideas that we ever had, even this morning with one of the gubernatorial candidates talking about the community college role in workforce training. And again, the power of the united. This was a tough sell to the presidents at the time. It was an easier sell to the business community. But you know, the presidents were nervous about joining together in this way. I won't drill down. But look at the numbers. The proof is in the numbers. Since inception, we've provided training. The colleges, coordinated by the consortium, have trained over 200,000 employees at over 7,500 businesses and have generated $40 million in revenue for our colleges along the way. That's pretty impressive. And lastly, where are the doctoral students that are here? Stand up for a second. And Monica, you stand up too as well. Monica Reed Kerrigan, These are students in the doctorate program. Fidel and others, thanks for being here. This was a good day when this idea popped into our heads. And so we approached Rowan, pre-Monica, and said to then Provost Ali Hushman, hey, we ought to create a doctorate program in community college leadership. And more than that, we ought to get our presidents teaching in it and sitting on dissertation committees. So we went to work and kicked it off. And now about half of the courses are taught by our presidents and senior leaders. And you all have commencements. It's a special moment to attend these Rowan commencements for our community college, emerging community college leaders. So that's the top 10. And I'm sure you would agree, it's magical to see how the 19 have worked together to deliver all of that. You know, so I kind of look for analogies to capture the power of this council. A long time ago, one of our retiring presidents gave one of these talks about reflections after many years. And she used the analogy of the United Nations or the League of Nations, you know, about the collective might of individuals, in this case, countries. I have a more mundane example that I'd like to use. The NFL. I was thinking about this. The National Football League. Ownership, individual owners, colleges, with an NFL office. A commissioner who works for the owners, it's a stretch. But if you think about the power of the NFL and the revenues that they generate, they give up something to gain from that power. They share revenues, right? And so I like that analogy because the NFL was so successful. And if you've followed sports, most of you do, you know, there's the changing of the guard from the Wellington Maras, the Giants owner, and you get new blood like Jerry Jones, which, you know, don't quite see with the same vision the power of the whole. And we've had some of that, but I think there's no question that the power has been evident. If I have one pet peeve on this first part of this, I'll move more quickly on the others. It's hard to move quickly. It's been a lot of years. But every once in a while I hear some of our folks say, innocently enough, you know, we really don't have a system for New Jersey's community colleges. And I kind of bristle at that because we do have a system. If by system, a person who makes that statement means a top-down system with a state board and a chancellor, well, we don't have that, don't want that. We do have a system, but it happens to be a system that depends on, well, I like to say it this way, from the council's perspective. Influence, well played, can be sometimes even more effective than line authority. You know, you build up collateral, capital to draw down and use, and we've had tremendous success, you would agree. And so we do have a system that has delivered state policies, funding. And so do me a favor, if somebody in your company says we don't have a system, politely maybe say, well, we actually do. It's a decentralized approach. And I get great comfort and smiles when I talk to people like Casey Crable in SUNY and Thomas Sekinibi in CUNY. And he said, you know, Larry, you don't know how, maybe you don't fully appreciate the power of the council and the collaboration until you're sitting at a monthly SUNY meeting where the chancellor, you know, speaks for 90% of the time you're there, just giving her directives. So we do have a system. All right, more quickly, the present. I mentioned Lynn delivered this white paper. Won't drill down, but there are four things, and then Jake did this nice brochure. So this is the full agenda that we're delivering to the two gubernatorial candidates, and a nice punchy brochure that summarizes that. But take a look at page 7, if you will. I'll just do this ever so briefly. I think there are 4 compelling themes. You know, we're going to talk about funding. That's section 1, of course. We're the largest sector. We don't get nearly enough funding, but I'm going to pass over that for the purposes right now. But 4 compelling things as to why this is the community college time. 1, page 7, we're the most affordable pathway to a bachelor's degree. And look at those first 3 sentences. These are pretty compelling facts. 45% of all of the students who graduate from a New Jersey four-year college have attended one of our colleges. Almost half. That's pretty impressive. And students who complete their first 2 years entirely at one of our colleges, they save $21,000 in tuition. That's the highest savings in the country. Also pretty impressive. And then lastly, the third paragraph, our students are fifth best among the 50 states in completing their bachelor's degree after they transfer. So, can't dispute the facts. We are an affordable pathway and a successful pathway to a bachelor's degree. That's a compelling piece of information in the present tense that we're sharing with these two gubernatorial candidates. Flip over to the next page, number 8. Not everybody needs a bachelor's degree. Lynn just briefed the executive committee. Maybe you'll hear about it at the brief meeting after dinner tonight. There's a new manufacturing caucus being created in the legislature, all to this point, right here, that there are many good jobs, especially so in New Jersey, good jobs defined to mean paying an average of $55,000 a year that don't require a bachelor's degree. Look at the next page, page 9. You'll see left-hand column what some of those jobs are: radiation therapist, web developer, computer network. So this is a compelling part of the community college story. With an associate degree or even a certificate, it's a pathway to the middle class for many New Jerseyans who otherwise wouldn't have it. Also on page 9, I've already talked about this a bit. If you think about businessmen and women, what they want most, they want to hire new employees. But the fact of the matter is, 10, 15 years from now, most of the people who will be working for them are already working for them. So retooling the current workers that they employ is a critical factor. Some people like to call this human capital. You've got to grow and strengthen that human capital by hiring new workers, but retooling your current workers. And we do that very well. If you think about it, by definition, these are part-time students, and that's something we have for years done very well. So those are key themes. And the last one I've already touched on, these partnerships that we have with high schools. Raise your hand if you wished we didn't have to do remediation programs. We'd all raise our hands. Now, that's not going to happen in our lifetimes, and therefore our faculty and our leaders, our academic leaders, are doing their best to transform those programs. But a better solution still is to work with the high schools, as we're doing, so that when they get to us, they don't need remediation in the first place. All right, so I've sketched for you the past, the present, and now the future. So I want to mention 3 things, and then the mic and the camera will go off, and I really hope that you'll share your perspectives on these, because this has been such a blessing for me to spend 27 years doing this. But like anything, there are stress fractures emerging, so to speak. I'm going to mention 3, but spend most of my time on 1 that's recently in the news. All 3 are framed by the tough, how many times could I say tough, fiscal climate facing our colleges. Number 1, in terms of possible futures, this whole notion of coordinated autonomy, sometimes I'm amazed that it's lasted for 20 plus years, because it's in some ways unnatural. I wrote an article years ago for the AACC journal, and I tried to get maybe too cute with the title. I said something like, when commitment to community hurts community colleges. Well, how can that be? When commitment to community hurts community colleges. And what I tried to convey was that Jim cares mostly about union probably to this day, and you all do, but if that interest in your own community college becomes so parochial that it inhibits the ability to work together, that's what I meant by saying when it can hurt community colleges. And so the coordinated autonomy model, 2017 vintage, it does have some stress fractures. Frankly, we've got many, many new presidents that don't know, let alone own, the rich history that I've just shared with you. New leadership is a blessing, but it's a challenge. And especially because of this financial pressure, right? You know, each college is struggling to, we think we've hit the bottom of the enrollment dip. Those of us that have done this for a long time have seen multiple cycles. But you know, I don't have any magic bullets on any of this. I'm just giving my own heads up that coordinated autonomy is showing some stress fractures, and have to figure out, the next person is going to have to figure out how to put some salve on those fractures. Two, a word about student success and our Center for Student Success. I am so thrilled that the strategic plan that Linda Lamb is going to be sharing after dinner and the goals from that process, led by Will Austin and others. Joanna Morales chaired the committee. She enlisted Will's help, trustees. Out of 14 goals, so many of them reinforce this commitment to student success. I worry that, this is my second worry, I worry that because of this financial stress, that our presidents and our trustees will find it difficult to invest in things that support student success because they're trying to figure out how to not lay people off, you know? Dick, when he was chair, always liked to use business leaders' terms like ROI, return on investment. We were at a recent national gathering, and we do this student work for two reasons. One, it's the right thing to do morally and ethically for our students. But two, there's the great potential for helping the bottom line. So here's the New Jersey bottom line. If we could, through these student success efforts, we want to get students, as many as we can, to graduate. But if we got every student right now enrolled at one of our colleges to complete 2 more courses, 6 credits, that would produce tuition revenue that exceeds our current state aid. So the reason I share that is I hope that, as tough as the budgets are, that our trustees continue to support their presidents in investing in advisors and counselors and things that are going to get more students to stay longer with us, hopefully graduate. And there will be a return downstream on that investment. But we all get, I guess even for businessmen and women, Dick, it's, when you're under financial stress, it's hard to find the startup capital, so to speak, to make these investments. But if you make them, the return is evident in other states. We've been other places, Christine and Jessenia, where we've seen boards that have said to their presidents, the presidents come with a recommendation to raise tuition $3, I'm making this up, $3 a credit, and the board has said, make it $4, and we want $1 dedicated to student success initiatives. So think about that. All right, I saved the toughest one for last, and we'll have time then to see your wisdom. You know, this coordinated autonomy is the noun, coordinated is the adjective. So the noun is the most prominent piece of this story of the New Jersey community colleges. And autonomy, Governor Whitman put this in play, by the way. Catherine Dickno, she was a trustee at then Somerset County College. So she got this. She then became a freeholder and then governor. This autonomy works only if our boards of trustees are strong and autonomous. And right now, I'm going to go forward with this observation, even if I'm going to ask this question. Is anybody from Essex here? I didn't think so, but I would say this even if they were. The recent news out of Essex County College. That board is weakened and not autonomous. Now, it's not unique to Essex, but not many of our colleges are being written about by the New York Times, and Essex has been repeatedly in the news. That board has been very weakened and losing its independence. So what to do about that? Well, I sure wish I had the answer for you. If we had the answer, we would have shared it and promoted it a long time ago. But here are some ideas, and I'd like your take on some of these when I'm finished in a minute. What to do about that? Because frankly, if we don't figure it out, our sector is in trouble, real trouble. Because again, without autonomy, this good work can't happen. We won't attract good presidents if we don't figure it out. We won't keep good presidents if we don't figure it out. Our presidents and our trustees in an ideal world are co-leaders. They're co-leaders of our colleges. And we need both to make this work. And right now we're at 27 years I've been at this. These things, like most things in life, they come and go in cycles, but this is about as bad as I've ever seen it. Take that for what it's worth. Bad's not the right word. It's the most worrisome that I've ever seen it. So what to do about it? Well, number one is one of the handouts. This body, the council, did produce years ago, what do we call it there, Joe, the trustee appointment guidelines. I don't need to look at it, but you know, and it's still relevant to this day. It does tell the world what the state law says. You may not know, the state law requires a trustee selection committee. It's largely ignored. That is supposed to vet good candidates for trustees that the freeholders or county executive then appoint, with the exception of the two by the governor. That's one thing that we can become more active in talking about. Trustee training. You remember we had a bill in, we still have that bill in, Lynn, right? That would require community college trustees to have annual training. There is legislation like that for hospital boards, for school boards. It's not a panacea, but we're still at that bill, working that bill, and so that's another thing. Staggered terms of our boards. You've heard us talk about this. The law says that the terms of our trustees should be staggered. A couple come off, then they either get reappointed or not. Well, there's a flaw in that law, in that county government leaders, you know this, they've discovered that they can capture the board, so to speak, of trustees by letting, as trustees' terms expire, the law says, and there was good logic to this, they stay on the board until either reappointed or replaced, right? So this is something in state houses we like to call the law of unintended consequences. Well, what's the unintended consequence to that law? That when your term ends, Joe, you stay on until either reappointed or replaced. Well, the unintended consequence is that county executives especially seem to be onto this lately. We have 5 of our 21 with county executives. They let those roll over until they have 2 in their pocket, 4, 6, and on a Tuesday evening, they can replace half the board. It was never the intention. We've talked about possibly remedying that through law. How about the composition of our boards? Does it make sense in 2017 that, with Union County College being the exception, and speak to Jim and Maggie and others as to their long history and Mary Zimmerman, but does it make sense in the year 2017 that county government appoints all but 3 of our trustees? I'm not sure anymore. You know, that was the original statute and it stays to this day, but if you want to make an argument based on funding, the state share right now is down to 20, 19, 18%, depending on the college, sometimes lower. The county share is not much better, Linda. County share is about the same. So if you want to make a decision as to the composition of a board based on funding, it's the student share that needs to be represented. And so, you know, that would be a very delicate conversation to have, but I'm not sure the current composition of our boards fits anymore. Lastly, as possible remedies to the situation that's underway right now at Essex, not only Essex, you know, it might be time to talk about an enhanced state role in coordinated autonomy. Now, I want to be clear from my take, I don't mean reversing the 1994 statute and bringing back a chancellor. There aren't many in the room that were here then. Glenn Gabert, Steve, anybody else? Was Barbara Gaba, now President Nell came. You worked in the department for some time, so I don't think those of us that were good colleagues like Barbara and others worked for the department, but and Barbara, I didn't vet this with you, but I think you would agree. The members of the Board of Higher Ed were prominent citizens of New Jersey, probably might have been an exception or two, had never set foot on a community college campus. And they didn't know us, they didn't get us. Now, Dick, in his work as a member of the current governor's advisory council for higher ed, he's made them come to our campuses. But so we couldn't get traction. There's no way we could have gotten traction under a board for some of the accomplishments that I pointed out, that we were the only sector to get tagged for part-time students. We were the only sector to get Chapter 12 increases. We were the only sector in the Whitman years that got state funding increases. It just wouldn't happen under a board. So I'm not a vote to going back. But, and Steve and Will and I have talked about this a little bit, there might be ways to empower the Secretary of Higher Education to give her, currently, a little more juice that could be deployed in an Essex County College situation. Hey, county executive, hey, freeholders, knock it off. Knock it off. We license you. You cannot operate in New Jersey without our license. Knock it off. To that point, I was with the governor last week in Newark, or 2 weeks ago in Newark, and last week in Camden. And Don was there from Camden and others. And he was there in both cases to celebrate and announce, in the case of Newark, returning control to the local school board. Camden, a little bit different story. They have had a more recent intervention, but the theme was the same. Troubled school districts. Some of this will sound familiar, a lot of political interference, and the state government assigned monitors. They intervened, and then ultimately they took over. Now, I'm not advocating a takeover of Essex County College or any college, not at all. But there's got to be some sweet spot where the state could say, knock it off. And so, don't know what that is, but one of our presidents said when we met last Monday, when you read stories about what's going on at Essex, you worry that that virus, so to speak, might spread to others. And it can. The freeholders talk to one another. So, all right, so wasn't that uplifting? Let me close and bridge to the questions and your observations by being more uplifting. I know you would agree with this, that community colleges are, without a doubt, one of New Jersey's and the country's greatest success stories. I mean, I say that every time I have the opportunity to do so. I mean, think about it, 50 years, less than a lifetime. We've gone from 0 community colleges and 0 community college students to now 400,000 strong. Nationally, 1,200 community colleges, about 12 million students. It's remarkable. It's a fantastic American and New Jersey success story. And relatedly, we have our challenges. I've just outlined a few. But there's never been a more exciting time, really exciting time, to be a community college leader, trustee, president, academic VP, whatever. It's our time. It's our time, Many of you, and I like this analogy, have called community colleges the Ellis Island. I had the privilege of traveling to China a couple of years ago as part of a team, and I met Mike McDonough there. Remember that, Mike? Yeah. And it was the Ellis Island imagery that we as community college leaders were trying to share, with arms wide open. Come one, come all. Come to community colleges. We're an engine of economic growth for communities and the state and the country. And we're a pathway to opportunity in the middle class for so many of our citizens who wouldn't have it otherwise.